We're now live.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet meeting, Shropshire Council, 16th of February 2022. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Can I remind members to please identify your name and role before speaking so that it is clear to those watching the meeting as to who is speaking. Due to works taking place within the Shire Hall, we may encounter a fire alarm. So for those of you in the room, the nearest assembly point, if the fire alarm does go off, is assembly point A, which is over towards the social club in the corner of the car park. Please leave the building via the fire door by main reception and make your way to that muster point. So, moving on to the agenda. Item number 1, apologies. We don't have any apologies, all Cabinet members are in the room. Item number 2, disclosable interests. I will be declaring an interest in items 15 and 16 and will take no part in the debate and will leave the room. However, to aid the organisation of this meeting, I'll bring item number 17 forward, deal with that one and then leave the room for the latter 2 items. Moving on to item number 3, which is the minutes of the 19th of January. Do I have proposed? Well, I'm happy to propose them. Do I have a seconder for those? Thank you, Councillor Potter. So proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Potter. Moving on to public questions, we have 4 public questions received and Mr Collard is going to read all of them. So over to you, Tim.
Thank you. The first question is from Ian Matthews and he asks, what definite and established plans does the council have for the development of the town centre and surrounds of Shrewsbury immediately following the completion of the North West Relief Road, assuming this project goes ahead? And if no such plans exist, would the Cabinet give an assurance that a plan will be published prior to the approval of the North West Relief Road?
Thank you, Tim, and the response will be from Councillor Ed Potter.
Thank you very much for the question. The Council's strategic growth aspirations for Shrewsbury are captured in the emerging local plan review for the period 2016 to 2038. This is currently subject to independent examination. Specifically, policy S16.1 of the draft local plan states, Shrewsbury is the strategic centre for Shropshire and the primary focus for new developments in the county. Recognising this role, the building upon the priority established in the Big Town Plan to achieve balanced growth between 2016 and 2038, around 8,625 dwellings will be delivered and around 100 hectares of employment land will be made available for development to provide choice and competition in the market. Policy S16 fully acknowledges that the wider strategic master plans and development proposals will need to be taken into account in the delivery of these strategic objectives. These include the Big Town Plan and its associated master plan documents, which are considered to be material considerations in decision making. Policy S16 also makes specific reference to the delivery of the proposed North West Relief Road, which the plan supports in principle. With specific regard to the development opportunities created by the development of the North West Relief Road, it is not considered that the development of the town's overall proposed housing and employment requirements to 2038, as well as wider developments in the town centre, are directly reliant upon the delivery of the North West Relief Road. Indeed, the rationale for the delivery of the North West Relief Road is not predicated on the delivery of additional housing and employment development in and around the town, rather its cost/benefit analysis, as accepted by the DFT within the outline business case. It's based on monitorising local improvements to journey time reliability, air quality, model shift and road accident reductions within the town as a whole. Similarly, whilst the North West Relief Road is considered to have a potentially contributing impact on reducing traffic within the town centre, the Big Town Plan does not consider it to be a dependency for this to happen. A movement and public realm strategy is due to commence shortly, and this work will bring forward proposals and scenarios consistent of the complementary opportunities that the North West Relief Road offers to the Big Town Plan, without it being seen as an interdependency. However, clearly the North West Relief Road is a significant infrastructure proposal, and therefore it is appropriate for the draft local plan to recognise and build upon these opportunities. First, it is recognised that in seeking to allocate land to the west of Ellesmere Road, SHR 173 for 450 dwellings, the draft plan states that the delivery of this site is directly dependent upon the construction of the North West Relief Road. The draft local plan also recognises there may be windfall commercial opportunities created between the line of the road and the existing urban area which could come forward following completion of the road, although these are not identified as specific site allocations in the draft plan. In summary, there is no single plan that directly responds to the development of the town centre and the surrounds of Shrewsbury immediately following the completion of the North West Relief Road. Rather, the North West Relief Road is a material consideration in the context of strategies and plans as illustrated, but not exclusively by those mentioned above. These plans provide assurance that the implications and opportunities resulting from significant infrastructure proposals, such as the North West Relief Road, are robustly considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potter. The next question is coming from Save Our Shire Hall, but there are a number of questions within this question, and they will be answered by different portfolio holders. So over to you, Tim.
Yes, thank you. I'll pause after each sub-question. Save Our Shire Hall are collectively concerned about the decisions being made during this Cabinet meeting and next week's full Council meeting. The decisions being made have the possibility to change the face of Shrewsbury and Shropshire forever, and not necessarily for the better. A decision one way could result in Shropshire losing a second Shire Hall, an icon of 1960s post-war architecture, a building that is not only important for the people of Shropshire, but also the hundreds of Shropshire Council staff that were based there pre-March 2020. We ask the following questions. Number one, has Shropshire Council staff well-being been adequately considered in this commitment to the continuation of pandemic-style working, with sustained preference to work from home and the possible loss of vital office space at Shire Hall?
Thank you very much, Tim. The response to this question will be from Councillor Gwilym Butler.
Good morning, Councillor Gwilym Butler, portfolio holder for Finance and Corporate Resources. The response is the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us all that we can work differently, and in many ways it has helped services be more flexible and colleagues especially to better balance their home and work commitments. However, we acknowledge that new ways of working don't suit every employee. All staff, including those occasional office users, have access to all our admin buildings across the county for teams to come together, catch-ups with line managers and to support wellbeing. No member of staff has been told to work from home. We are committed as an organisation to the health, wellbeing and resilience of all our employees, and as such have invested in a suite of wellbeing interventions to support the workforce over the last 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwilym. Tim?
The second part of the question is, what is the most recent financial assessment of refurbishment for the Shire Hall?
Thank you, Tim. And the response to this part of the question comes from Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Dean Carroll, Portfolio Holder for Physical Infrastructure. No further detailed work was undertaken in terms of feasibility for the refurbishment of the Shire Hall, post the key decisions taken at the Council meeting of the 16th of July 2020. In the report, it advised that in the Stage 2 financial business case, which was prepared by Ryder, Levitt and Bucknell, which identified an estimated cost of £24.1 million, this was on the basis of refurbishing the Shire Hall, which was presented to full council in December 2018. Due to inflation and comparable scope of works, some of which previous costs excluded, including fenestration and asbestos removal, etc., means the new sum is likely to be in excess of £30 to £34 million.
Thank you, Dean. Tim?
Part 3. How will the demolition of Shire Hall, construction of the Smithfield Riverside development and new housing estate on the Shire Hall site meet Shropshire Council's commitment to net zero by 2030? To quote Lord Debden in a BBC Online article, October 2021, "We need to think differently," he said. "It's not acceptable to pull buildings down like this. We have to learn to make do and mend."
Thank you, Tim. And once again, Councillor Dean Potter.
Excuse me.
Just mixing my cabinet members. Councillor Dean Carroll.
I'm glad that we're so memorable and so distinctive. I'm not sure whether Councillor Potter or I should be more flattered by the comparison. So, to continue to consider alternative uses for Shire Hall for use by others such as education, residential, commercial uses, but to date no viable option or interested party has been identified. Adaptability and suitability for future uses, with prohibitive refurbishment and ongoing life cycle costs, have prevented refurbishment options from coming forward. Similarly, not economic or suitably adaptable for Shire Hall for council needs moving forward. So regrettably, vacating the Shire Hall, however, with the opportunity to bring forward new low carbon development that unlocks wider economic benefit in the town centre. Shropshire Council decisions now routinely consider carbon performance as an integral part of the decision-making process. In the case of Shire Hall, there are a range of complex and overlapping issues to consider, which include changes to the pattern of staff working and the embodied and operational carbon costs of upgrading buildings, as well as redeveloping and replacing them.
Thank you, Dean. Tim?
Final part of the question. When and in what form will a full traffic assessment be made public for the Smithfield Riverside development?
And the response to this part of the question is from Councillor Ed Potter.
Thank you, Leader. A full suite of traffic assessments will be undertaken as the projects proceed, both to manage the intervening construction periods and the longer-term traffic management post-implementation. These will be required by the planning process, however they will be undertaken and continually appraised and reviewed as part of the iterative design process. A movement and public realm strategy has recently been commissioned, and this will further inform the location of all public transport interventions, as well as walking, cycling, parking in and around the town centre. The Commission explicitly aims to address health and well-being, climate change and air quality imperatives, and includes for extensive stakeholder and public engagement that will ensure we reach out to all interested parties across the county.
Thank you, Ed. Tim, moving on to the next question.
This is the first question from Mr. Malloy. In response to my public question at the 13th of January Cabinet meeting, the Leader of the Council replied, "I am happy to add that my record demonstrates that I'm a strong advocate of affordable housing and have been vocal in my disappointment at the proposed reductions in affordable housing by developers. And the officers will tell you that I am keen we hold as firm a line as is practically possible in this matter." To this, you added, "I can reassure everyone that provision of affordable housing is a priority for this council." Back to Mr. Malloy now. Despite these claims, in a further email response to me of the 11th of February, the leaders declined to get involved with my concern that it appeared that the council's own independent viability consultant had reduced the affordable housing contribution on the scheme by circa £360,000 in an apparent contradiction to what the applicant believed they could afford. This on top of a discounted rate already provided for the scheme. You, of course, as portfolio holder, have failed to respond to that issue at all. Just last week, it would appear that there has been another miscalculation of the affordable housing on a scheme by the council's very own development company, with an underdisplay of around 66%. Given the above and the numerous other failings of the planning department, isn't it about time that you got a grip of your portfolio and started addressing the litany of failures in what many consider is a not fit for purpose planning department, and provided results instead of rhetoric before pursuing grandiose monopoly type development schemes in Shrewsbury, which you seem to see as a higher priority than ensuring that the appropriate amount of affordable housing is provided by developers in Shropshire?
Thank you, Tim. And the answer to that is from Councillor Ed Potter.
Mr Malloy's views and comments are noted. Cabinet and officers have responded many times to his concerns about the lack of affordable housing on developments, and Mr Malloy does not wish to accept the position that officers and members of the planning committee have to work within the planning system that operates in this country. That includes the viability of a site being taken into account when assessing the planning merits of a scheme. If this results in a reduction of affordable housing through a robust assessment of the scheme, then that has to be accepted. Mr Malloy refers to an application on committee last week that was assessed against national and local policies. The vacant building credits was introduced by the government, and we are required to take them into account. This results in the reduction in the required levels that can legitimately be requested. This council is committed to providing the right level of affordable housing, and there are many different approaches being taken. The planning process is not the only mechanism. However, as portfolio holder, I continue to work closely with officers and members to ensure that we explore every avenue possible to achieve the right homes in the right places at affordable levels for our communities.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Tim?
Thank you. This is the second question for Mr Malloy, and I should make it clear it's addressed to the leader. You seem to me to have a strange relationship with the facts when it comes to declaring your pecuniary interests. Apparently, you rely on selectively misquoted LGA guidance to not declare assets on your council register of interest, but have declared those same interests on your LEP register of interest after being reported for not doing so by a member of the public. The LEP would now appear to have a more accurate register of your interests than Shropshire Council. On the 26th of September 2021, you wrote this about your business interests. I genuinely think it is important that such issues are scrutinised to ensure the highest possible standards of local government are maintained. And on the 1st of October 2021, you wrote, I'm confident that I've disclosed everything required by the Code of Conduct. The above comment was made before you had to amend your LEP register of interest because of inaccuracy. And as you represent Shropshire Council on the LEP board, then the Council's Code of Conduct applies to you when attending meetings of the LEP, which is set out in Part 5 of the Council's Constitution. To quote, this Code of Conduct applies to you when you are acting in your capacity as a councillor, which may include when your actions would give the impression of a reasonable member of the public with knowledge of all the facts that you are acting as a councillor. A good leader leads by example, so will you be offering an apology to the residents of Shropshire for your apparent reluctance to fully declare your pecuniary interests? And will you amend your Shropshire Council Register of Interest in line with that of the LEP, or consider resigning to ensure the highest possible standards of local government are maintained?
Thank you, Tim. I would like to respond by stating that I find the suggestion that I have a strange relationship with the facts when declaring my pecuniary interests offensive and totally unwarranted. I have registered the interests as I am required to do, both with the council and with the LEP. They have different requirements, both of which I have now complied with. I can absolutely assure you once again that I am extremely conscious of the need to declare any conflicts of interest, and having been appointed by this council as its leader for the next 4 years, I have every intention of fulfilling that mandate. So moving on, Tim, we now move on to members' questions. Most of the members are online. So the first question is from Councillor Rob Wilson, who is joining us online. Rob, over to you. Thank you very much. Councillor Rob Wilson from Copthorne. In answer to my question about the North West Road at Cabinet on the 19th of January, the Cabinet member for Physical Infrastructure said the full business case is expected to be completed for member review prior to submission to DFT by winter 2022. He later confirmed to me by email that this means by the end of this calendar year, 2022. On the 8th of September 2021, the then Cabinet Member for Highways, in response to a Cabinet question by Councillor David Vasma, said the full business case will be considered for approval by Council members before submission, noting the forecast costs at that time. The full business case is programmed for completion by December 2021. Can the Council explain why, in a space of 4 months, the full business case has seemingly been delayed by up to a year? Thank you, Rob, and the response will come from Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you. And before I start the response, I think it's pertinent to point out that the correct name of this project is the Northwest Relief Road, not the Northwest Road. In order to prepare and submit a full business case in line with the requirements of the DFT, there are certain conditions that need to be met. These include the receipt of full planning permission for a project and a fully resolved forecast project cost. Until the cost forecasts have been made, key calculations around value for money and the benefit cost ratio are not able to be assessed and reported to DFT. Such calculations are then used as key assessment criteria by DFT in evaluating the project's business case. Due to the ongoing liaison with bodies such as Natural England and the Environment Agency in order to satisfy planning requirements, the project has been advised that the planning determination has now been pushed back to summer 2022. Many of the environmental management, mitigation and monitoring solutions being agreed with these agencies will have an effect on the final Northwest Relief Road designs and therefore cost. As such, until the planning permission is granted and final cost established, there are elements of the full business case that cannot be drafted, reviewed and approved. The full business case will also need to be considered by members at full council in advance of its submission, and the revised programme now being reported allows the time for all of this to be undertaken. The delay in submission of the full business case does not, at this time, however, mean that the Northwest Relief Road programme overall is critically impacted around the forecast construction and road opening dates.
Thank you, Dean. Rob, Councillor Wilson, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you very much. Are there limits on the funding that is coming from the DFT and the LEP in terms of timescale? I seem to remember reading something at some point that there was a timescale within which it had to be spent.
Councillor Carroll?
To the best of my knowledge at this time, we are not in any danger of surpassing any timescales that may have been laid down by any outside body.
Thank you.
Happy to check on that for you, Rob.
Thank you.
To clarify that, I can see Mark Barrow, our Director of Place, nodding his head. So, okay, moving on to the next question, Rob, which is also yours.
I welcome the fact that Cornovi has handed over the keys to the first homeowners at the Frith. It was clear from the photos published that a significant amount of ground has been paved. With regards to the flooding issues faced in Shropshire, what efforts have been made on Cornovi developments to use sustainable drainage systems?
And again, Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you. Cornovi Developments Limited implements sustainable drainage solutions across all its sites, including at the Frith. At the Frith, CDL used permeable paving with changes in levels along with underground water storage tanks to minimise surface water outfall. CDL will use this technique along with balancing ponds where appropriate on other developments to minimise surface water outfall and deliver improved outfalls into the existing drainage system. The solution has been developed by the CDL team, its engineers in partnership with Severn Trent and Welsh Water.
Thank you, Dean. Rob, do you have supplementary?
Thank you very much. That's good to hear. I'm just wondering if there are any higher levels aspiration that we could go to with Cornovy, such as rainwater gardens or the like.
Councillor Carroll?
I'm happy to take that back and discuss it with the Managing Director and Board of CDL.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Rob, for your questions. Next question comes from Councillor Julian Dean, who's also joined us online. Julian.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, just to express some frustration, I actually haven't had the written replies yet, and normally we do get them in time so that you can work out whether a supplementary question is in order. So I'm just going to choose the Green Homes Grant one to start with. So here's my question. The Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Scheme, Phase 2, known as LAD2, is designed to enable local authorities to deliver energy efficiency improvements to low-income households in low energy performance homes, thereby lowering bills and reducing carbon. Many said the fund was flawed in design. See Inside Housing from May last year. The fund closes at the end of March 2022. Of the 300 million in the fund, the Midlands was allocated 61.2 million. How much of this fund was allocated to Shropshire? How many Shropshire households successfully applied for grant funding under the scheme? How many household projects have been started, have been completed, or are expected to successfully access funds? If there is likely to be a significant underachievement compared to both the allocation and the actual level of need, what factors do you consider account for this? What are the prospects for the next tranche, LAD 3/HUG, Sustainable Warmth Competition, delivering to significant numbers of households in the county? And then there's an extra bit, so I'll just keep going. Meanwhile, the recent corporate carbon monitoring report included reference to a 7 million budget for county-wide housing retrofit working with housing associations, but this has not appeared in the capital strategy priority capital scheme schedule. Why is this not yet a priority scheme, allowing it to appear in the capital budget proposals for 22-23? What plans are in place to ensure the project management of this 7 million fund is able to address the constraints faced by the various iterations of LAD, which evidence from elsewhere suggests are to do with the supply chain and the procurement processes involved?
Thank you, Julian. Councillor Ian Nellens is going to respond.
Councillor Ian Nellens, portfolio holder for climate change, natural assets and the green economy. Thanks for the question, and obviously a number of responses to the specific pieces. First of all, how much of the LAD2 fund for the Midlands was allocated to Shropshire? That was a total of £2,267,200. How many Shropshire households successfully applied for grant funding under the scheme? So far, 350 have applied. How many of those household projects have started? 140, most of them in the assessment stage. How many have been completed? There have been 13 high heat, HHRSH, whatever that stands for, high heat retention storage heaters installed, and 1 park home externally clad. Are expected to be successfully access funds. At present, we still hope to hit our initial target by the end of June. Is there likely to be a significant underachievement compared to both the allocation and the actual level of need? What factors do you consider account for this? A number of issues there. Potential delays in the Midlands energy hub procurement, supply chain constraints, rising costs, shortage of assessors or coordinators, complexity of properties, complexity of works, unrealistic grant values, and Shropshire not attractive to installers as it does not offer economic or economies of scale these works rely on and external distances to travel. The fifth part, why is a £7 million budget for county-wide housing retrofit referred to in the recent corporate carbon monitoring report not yet in the capital strategy? These schemes do not include any contribution for the council. They are entirely funded by government or RSL landlord contributions. 6. What plans are in place to ensure the project management of the £7 million fund is able to address constraints faced by the various iterations of LAD, examples, supply chain and procurement? In answer to that, where possible, all constraints include an extension or ability to extend into the following scheme. To bring forward more resources into the affordable warmth efficiency team, and bids include requirement for main contractors to act as an umbrella organisation to allow local non-accredited installers to take part in the scheme, then apply in their own right in the future. Thank you.
So following all that, Julian, you've got a supplementary.
A supplementary comment, if I may, just thank you for the answer, and the sort of bullet pointed bit in the middle where you outline the constraints, which absolutely, you know, by and large, this is not sort of having a go at the council at all. Those constraints I absolutely recognise, but what they do tell us is that our economic strategy really ought to put at its heart developing the supply chains and developing the skills that we need if we're going to do the decarbonisation of housing required, and that means partnership working. It means developing, you know, sort of models for that, and it needs to sit at the heart of the economic strategy. So that's my comment on that one. Shall I go to my second question?
Yeah, thank you, Julian. I just commented on that. I've just looked at Councillor Potter, and we'll take that on board. And I think we were all in total agreement with that. So yeah, please continue with your next question.
Okay, thank you. You'll be pleased a bit shorter. Over the last couple of years, a number of street trees have been lost in the Porthill division, usually due to poor health of the trees. Offers of replacement have occasionally been made, and I understand that Shrewsbury Town Council had offered to support the planting of appropriate street trees using techniques which provide long-term sustainability to both tree and footway, ensuring continued accessibility. However, no new trees have been planted. Street trees are a valuable part of our biodiversity. They add to the street scene, making places more pleasant to live, and they will form an important element of climate change adaptation, providing urban cooling and shade in heat waves. Community support for planting and maintenance of trees could support any planting programme. Please update me on the current policy and practice with regard to street trees. Can an appropriate policy for street trees please be developed to allow for the replacement of lost trees, and with a view to increasing tree populations in urban environments wherever possible? Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. And answering that question, Councillor Ian Nellens.
Thank you for the question, Julian. Shropshire Council recognises multiple and diverse benefits provided by trees and woodlands in general, and trees in the urban environment in particular. The societal values of trees are arguably at their greatest. Street trees are hugely important from environmental, landscape, wildlife and economic perspectives. A growing body of evidence suggests that towns should aim for a minimum canopy cover of 20% to provide a sustainable urban forest resource. A study of tree canopy cover by division across Shropshire shows the canopy cover currently ranges from a low 6.8% at Howscott to a high of 24.7% in Broseley. The tree canopy cover for each division can be seen on the Council's website at the Tree Planting Opportunities heat map. There's currently no overarching strategic approach or specific budget for tree planting and maintenance within Shropshire Council. Each service area is responsible for carrying out tree planting and maintenance work on its own land, but the vast majority of any available budget is inevitably directed to essential tree safety works as identified during inspections carried out by the Council's tree officers. The Council has a commitment to plant 345,000 trees by 2030. It is estimated that by 2030 these young trees will have stored around 730 tonnes of CO2, but by maturity these trees could store at least 135 tonnes of CO2. We are currently a little below the planting rates required to hit the target, but hope to get back on track this coming planting season. A particularly effective approach to reaching this target is to enable communities to plant the right trees in the right place. At present, our primary support for this has been financial, providing free trees via the annual community tree scheme. We will continue to work with other groups and organisations and engage with other initiatives to further support local communities to plant and care for trees. As one such example, Shropshire Council is a key partner in the DEFRA funded Trees Outside Woodlands project. One element of this work is to support the development of community tree nurseries to increase the supply of trees locally. We have already provided around £15,000 of funding to Shrewsbury Town Council to enhance their capacity for growing and distributing trees at the Reaping Cross nursery, and we are about to provide over £25,000 to support other tree nurseries this financial year. This includes the Chemist Pat's Garden and Tree Nursery in Shrewsbury that supplies trees to the Bellevue Tree Planting Group and could supply trees to other areas where new tree planting is needed. With regards to policy, the tree team writes the corporate tree safety policy in consultation with landowning service areas and other relevant stakeholders. The tree team is intended to bring forward a revised tree safety policy in the spring. The team is also currently in the process of establishing a corporate working group to address the pressing threat to our county's tree stock posed by ash dieback disease. However, the need is recognised for a wider corporate strategy for trees and woodland, including the planting and maintenance of new and replacement trees, and a mandate for this will be sought through the emerging tree safety policy and ash dieback action and recovery plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Julian, supplementary.
Again, thank you very much for the answer. And because I've just heard it, I can't work out a long one. But all I'll say is I just think that we need to specifically be able to say to residents when trees come out of pavements what the policy is in terms of possible replacements, because people are quite upset about losing trees in some of the streets where we have lost them in my ward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Julian. I know there's been a number of trees broken down in the town centre in the last few weeks as well, which is terribly sad. Yes, we'll take that on board. Moving on to the next question, which is from Councillor Alex Wagner. Are you with us, Alex?
Councillor Phasma here.
Oh.
I'm offering to read that question on behalf of Alex Wagner, who can't be here today.
I'm sure Alex will be delighted. To do carry on.
Thank you. On the 3rd of February 2022, the Council issued a press release announcing it had been awarded more than £140,000 of government funding to help enable and promote cycling and walking in the county. It went on to state that the Council will now consider how the funding will be spent and how it feeds into the ongoing development of the Council's new local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, LCWIP. This press release is still live on the Council's website. The Deputy Portfolio Holder for Physical Infrastructure confirmed on Twitter that this was new funding. Is it not the case that this funding from the DFT Capability Fund was awarded last year and is already funding the LCWIP being produced by City Science, therefore it is not available to fund new infrastructure projects?
Thank you, Councillor Basman. Councillor Ian Mellins.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Council funding allocation from the Capability Fund was confirmed in October 2021 by a letter from the Department of Transport. This letter confirmed that the allocation of £140,302 was to be paid in one instalment in December 2021. Capability Fund funding is revenue funding and therefore is not to be used to fund construction or infrastructure projects, but can be used to fund the planning or active travel infrastructure projects, including the commission of feasibility studies, as well as implementing travel behaviour changes and training initiatives. Yet there is an attached copy you will get of this of the Capability Fund guidance, and it states that it is expected that funding is to be used for interventions and activities which support the following funding objectives: support the development of infrastructure projects to the new standards set out, including updating previous plans such as LCWIPs as necessary, to promote increased levels of physical activity through walking and cycling for everyday journeys, to support access to new and existing employment, education and training through cycling and walking. Council's funding is being used to fund the following activities. First of all, the development of a Shropshire-wide local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, £70,000. Adult cycle skills training, £5,000, and residual funds of £65,303 will be used to combine with the active travel tranche 2 and fund the following initiatives: school travel planning and travel behaviours change within Shrewsbury, feasibility studies Mytenoak Road and Radbrook Road, and the Cromo Lane follow-up bus trial gates. And there is, as I said, attached to the paper copy of this, you will get the local authority Capability Fund guide. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Basman.
Thanks very much for that answer. I don't recall, but I don't think you've answered the question as far as whether it's been double counted, that funding.
Councillor Mellins.
It hasn't been double accounted for. It's I think if you use the analogy of we introduced the third bin and we pushed out that we were doing it, and we've done it again, and we will do it again when it actually goes out. So it's just, it was pushed out that the money was awarded and then when we received it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So moving on to the next question comes from Councillor Rosemary Dartnell, and Rosemary's in the room. Councillor Dartnell.
Last September, Council passed unanimously a motion acknowledging the need for urgent action in the face of the code red warning for humanity highlighted by the IPCC's latest report on the scientific consensus of the climate emergency. This council undertook 8 resolutions for action. Please can you provide an update on the implementation of 4 of the resolutions? Should I ask them one at a time, or?
Sorry, Rosemary, that would be great, and then Ian can come back in and answer the immediate question. Thank you very much.
The resolution was to develop climate emergency mitigation training for all council teams, cabinet, all members, and to appoint champions in all departments. And the question is please to provide information and further the update given to council in January. Have all portfolio holders and council executives completed accredited climate mitigation or carbon literacy training? Has such training for council staff and members been scheduled?
Thank you, Rosemary, for that. First part of the question, Councillor Ian Nellens.
Thanks for the question, Rosemary. The senior leadership team, cabinet and most directors, I said most because we all started it, but due to some external other activities, some had to weren't able to finish, but they will finish sooner rather than later. Most have completed the accredited carbon literacy training, and the council is currently applying for corporate carbon literacy accreditation and developing a wider training programme for other council members and officers, which will be made available later this year. And I can thoroughly recommend the training that was provided by CFR Shire. Thank you.
Yes. Councillor Dartmouth, question number 2.
Thank you. The second was the resolution was to strengthen the council's procurement policy so that all suppliers and contractors operate appropriate and rigorous climate emergency mitigation practice aligned with our own. So the question there is, please could you update us on what steps have been taken to improve and align climate mitigation in respect of council workload carried out by third-party providers?
Again, Councillor Ian Nellens.
Yeah, and it's obvious that we do know that the scope 3 emissions, those emissions generated indirectly in our supply chain, are the most significant part of our corporate carbon footprint. The climate change team have been working with colleagues from procurement, and we have now built a requirement into the standard procurement documentation for contractors to advise us about their current proposals. Initially, this will form part of a non-mandatory requirements in procurement documentation, but in future, potential suppliers will need to meet minimum standards to be able to be awarded a contract. There will need to be a staged approach in order to give the market time to align itself with our aims in respect of carbon reduction. Additionally, staff involved in commissioning, procurement and contracting will need to build the skills and capacity required to be able to clearly specify our requirements, evaluate contractor commitments and actively monitor delivery of these. We have grant funded the Shropshire Climate Action Partnership, working with the Shropshire Chamber and the Federation of Small Businesses, to commission and manage the provision of free carbon performance advice to 300 to 500 small businesses in Shropshire during 2022-23, including the potential to refer potential corporate supplies to the project for advice. Finally, as an example of good practice, we've already commissioned installers for the Affordable Warm Housing Retrofit Scheme on the basis of a procurement approach which allows us to rate social value equally with cost and select installers who will act as an umbrella organisation to provide training for subcontracted local installers in the energy efficiency and low carbon accreditation schemes which are required for effective climate mitigation. Thank you.
Number 3, Rosemary.
Thank you. The resolution, can I just say thank you for that? That included a lot of very welcome news, Councillor Nellens. Resolution number 3 was to produce a quarterly report detailing climate emergency performance in respect of management and operation of all council services. And the question was, when will the first quarterly report be published?
Thank you, Rosemary. Councillor Ian Nellens.
The annual report, as we are all aware, the carbon report was issued published in January. Shorter quarterly reports will be distributed in April, July and September. We won't be able to necessarily track all carbon emissions on a quarterly basis, but we will give updates on progress with projects and initiatives at April, July and September, with a full carbon report in January.
Thank you, Councillor Nellens. And then finally, is it finally, Rosemary, number 4? Yes.
It says finally. No, thank you. So the 4th resolution in question was proactively reduce the number of short car journeys taken, particularly in our towns at first. Act to discourage cars from our town centres, develop low traffic zones, create safe active travel routes and improve urban public transport. The question is, please could you describe the range and extent of new measures undertaken since September to address this high priority commitment to reduce traffic emissions in Shropshire towns? Specifically, how are cars and other motor vehicles to be discouraged from unnecessarily entering Shropshire town centres?
Thank you, Rosemary. Councillor Ian Lowens.
Thank you. A number of measures. First of all, Shropshire Council's recent post-bid, if successful, will provide a significant improvement to public transport with improved availability, and this incentive to switch to public transport and new vehicles being electric or hydrogen to support reduced or zero emissions between and within Shropshire's market towns. A range of other measures, including the potential development of low traffic neighbourhoods and weekend traffic closures, are currently being tested in Shrewsbury to help address and specifically reduce traffic and air quality concerns. The next local transport plan for Shropshire is being developed using a future-ready approach that considers and prioritises the mobility needs of people, places and activities rather than the transport mode-based approach of the past, with its requirement to follow the guidance of the National Transport Decarbonisation Plan. And following the recent members' workshop on LTP4 decarbonisation, was a key aim to an objective to this plan. Recognition of the role of active travel is maintaining sustainable communities and strengthening links with environmental and health agendas will be key to this work. Work has also recently started on developing the local cycling walking infrastructure plan for Shropshire to provide a strategic long-term approach to developing walking and cycling networks and identify cycling and walking improvements required in Shrewsbury, Bridgenorth, Ludlow, Market Drayton, Oswestry, Church Stretton and Whitchurch, and supplements within 10 kilometres of each of these towns. Finally, in Shrewsbury, work on the Big Town Plan movement strategy is exploring improvements to the public realm to support active travel modes, walking and cycling, and the opportunities presented by a reduction in cross-town traffic. Cabinet reports are scheduled for the summer period for the LTP4 and LCWIP for Cabinet approval. It should be remembered that agreements of last year's scrutiny meeting on LTP4 agreed that the Performance Board to monitor and report on LTP4 implementation and outcomes was agreed, which would also produce an annual report on progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. Now, Rosemary, you get supplementaries to those if you have any.
Okay. You'll be pleased to know that I haven't really just wished to make a supplementary comment and say that I think particularly the procurement of new contracts based on standards that align with our own is a real step forward, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed, Rosemary. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our members' questions and members of public questions. So we now move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is to receive a report from the Financial Strategy Task and Finish Group. Councillor Claire Wild joining us online. Councillor Wild.
Right, thank you. My name's Claire Wild. I'm the councillor for the Severn Valley, and I'm also chair of the Performance Scrutiny Committee and the Financial Task and Finish Group. I just want to say a few words, really. I think the Financial Task and Finish Group, it's a rolling programme, so it never stops. And we bring interim reports to Cabinet from time to time. This report contains the work we did on the budget. Unfortunately, the scrutiny of the budget was delayed, and that was nobody's fault, really. It was the North Shropshire by-election. But I thank the people that come and attend those meetings, because they really are very useful, and also thank the officers as well, because they did an awful lot of work to try and get the report to us. I think it was within 4 days of the announcement of the final settlement, so I'd like to thank the finance staff for that. And I'd ask you to note the report. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Councillor Wild. Certainly, Councillor Gordon Butler wishes to ask a question or make a statement. I'm not sure which. Councillor Gordon Butler.
Thank you, Claire. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge receipt of this report, and I welcome the report and the contents therein. And I just want to lay down the facts that this coming year we will hopefully have a much open and much more time for the scrutiny process to be delivered, starting in the summer all the way through like we did last year without any interruptions, and I will certainly commit to that. I'd like to ask you as Chair, Claire, if you will already take back from me that I'd like you to scrutinise the consultation process that we've just undertaken, so that we have we learn from that process to make the public consultation for the budget next year far easier for the public to understand and consider. And thank you again for the report, and I will be winging things over to you to look at, believe you me. Thank you.
Thank you, and we will take that to performance management and look at that. Thank you very much, Gwilym, and we look forward to seeing you at our next financial task and group finish meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Vasma?
Thank you. Just as a point to, I'd like to welcome the reports made by Councillor Butler, because I do think the analysis and examination of the budget this year has been quite poor for reasons that have been outlined. But I hope and I welcome this commitment to a full analysis of the budget next year, and hopefully we can have a much better outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Vasma. Councillor Butler?
Certainly, David, you have my word on that. And can I just reiterate to any member, if they have any alternative budgetary things they wish to table, the door is always open, and we will give them all due consideration, whatever they may be. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's also worth just pointing out that, of course, if we'd had a 3-year settlement from government, it would have made the whole process much easier, because part of the issue we have is that by not receiving our financial settlement until very close to Christmas, and having to literally go out to consultation, well, over Christmas if possible, it makes that process extremely difficult. But certainly there are areas of the budget that we can take more, we'll look more into closer to the time. But that will always make it difficult for us at the moment. So thank you, Councillor Ward. We'll note that report, and I'm sure Mr. Butler, sitting to my left here, is writing things down as we speak. So your agenda is likely to be quite full, I think. So thank you for that. So moving on to item number 7, which is the determination of admission arrangements for 2023-2024. Councillor Kirsty Hurst-Knight.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Kirsty Hurst-Knight, Portfolio Holder for Children and Education. It's just to bring forward the determination of admission arrangements for 2023-2024 and define our arrangements. Some brief history on how this is, and thank you to Carol, who is on the call actually in her team for admissions, for a very detailed report. The admissions arrangement for 23-24 are considered by the local admissions forum, and that's something that my Deputy Councillor Nick Barsley and myself attended on Wednesday the 1st of December. There are 2 recommendations to come forward to Cabinet today for approval for our formal determination, which, although there is no, we don't need a further consultation because there are no changes to the arrangement, we need to do this under the Schools Admission Code, and we require this is done by the 28th of February of this year. So the 2 recommendations are that the Cabinet formally determine the admission arrangements for 2023-24 for Shropshire's community and voluntary controlled schools, and that Cabinet, by the determination of the schools admission arrangements 2023-24, agrees to the publication of the arrangements in accordance with the School Admissions Code 2021 and to the notification of this to parties specified in the code. And with this proposal, I'd just like to point out this is not school-placed planning. We know, we've talked to members, there's a full review taking place later in the year. I'm happy to propose these 2 recommendations to Cabinet today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. Do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second that, Councillor Potter.
Thank you very much, Ed. I don't see any hands online. I don't have any hands in the room. So Kirsty has proposed it. Ed is seconding. All those in favour? Thank you. And thank you, Carol, for being on the call should there be any detailed questions. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item number 8, which is the Capital and Financial Strategy 2022-23 to 26-27. It's the final report. Councillor Gwilym Butler.
Thank you, Leader. It's Councillor Gwilym Butler here, Portfolio Holder for Finance and Corporate Resources. Leader, I'm not going to repeat what I said in January when we launched this strategy, but I would like to reiterate my thanks to staff in having to deliver a budget which none of us would have particularly wished for. We've been constantly lobbying central government, both directly and through our MPs, highlighting the lack of support for Shropshire, both on the levelling up agenda and through baseline budget on a regular basis to support social care. We also are left in uncharted waters with, as you previously quoted, only a yearly funding statement from government. We need at least 3 years settlement to be able to plan for the medium term, yet we are still obliged to with what we are given. I will not lie, I am concerned about the future and the ever-rising demand in social care and how we will fund it. It is disappointing that unlike some councils, we appear to get very little financial support from our colleagues in health, and yet it is us that have to constantly rise to the occasion and put care packages in place to get people out of hospital and prevent people getting there in the first place. It is unfair for the people of Shropshire that shortly, I believe, 85% of their council tax will be spent on social care, and yet we are not promised any of the new national insurance funding which is proposed for the NHS and social care. To balance this budget, I draw Cabinet's attention to the prediction for the general reserves, which must also receive our full attention moving forward. In respect to the capital programme, which I have full faith, taking a longer term view, that our projects will create opportunities for major growth in revenue via more business rates and enabling the increase in our council tax base, which will help future revenue budgets and hopefully make us more self-sufficient. Our major projects are based on economic expansion, jobs, housing and income creation for the people of Shropshire, whilst place shaping to deliver the core other objectives under our emerging Shropshire plan. Leader, I move recommendations in 3.1 A to H. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gwilym. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Dean Carroll will second that. I don't have any hands in the. Oh, yes, I do. Councillor David Basman.
Thanks. Thank you. I'd just like to, unfortunately this report came out quite late, and so it makes it very difficult to actually properly kind of look at it. But there are a number of figures in it regarding the budget and the final budget figure, the revenue expenditure. It's shown as 555.960 million in the recommendation, but in the revenue summary, it's different again, and the financial strategy report is different again. So I just wondered if we could just clear up exactly what the figure is.
Thank you, Dave. That might be a question. Seeing that Mr. Wharton is in the room, he's smiling at me. James, yes, Gwilym sat back in his chair. So, James Wharton.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to give you the answer straight off. I need to find the references in the report, and then I'll come back and just confirm what those figures are. If that's okay.
Absolutely fine. Is that all right with you, David? Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Julian Dean, online.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously we're all going to make extended comments on all this next week, so I won't do that now. I do have a technical question. Page, I think I'm looking at the right document, Appendix 3, page 51, corporate landlord capital scheme description. The biggest chunk, 3.4 million, says unallocated, commercial investment programme unallocated. I'm just wondering what that is doing sitting there. If it's heading towards something, it just seems like a big chunk of unallocated money.
Thank you, Julian. I've got Councillor Dean Carroll's going to come back to you on that one.
Thank you. Just before I give a full answer, could I ask Councillor Dean to repeat the exact page reference in? Of
course. Yeah. So I think I'm looking at Appendix 3 because I'm trying to keep you lot on my screen as well. I can't. It's the draft budget book, Appendix 3, page 51, corporate landlord capital, and the top line is commercial investment programme unallocated, and it actually gets bigger next year.
Yeah. Yes. I can answer that in the broader sense, in that we previously, a number of years ago at the council, approved a large sum for future commercial investments that would have to be brought back on a case-by-case basis. That was placed into the budget over a number of years, and I believe, I'm sure James will jump on me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is reflective of that, and just the fact that it is awaiting for suitable commercial investment opportunities. At the moment, with particularly high property prices in parts of the county, returns on investment aren't as good as they may be in other years to make acquisitions, so it's there waiting for suitable commercial investment opportunities to arise. Then whether either Mark who has the portfolio that where's the director that includes commercial investment, or James wants to give any more detail on that.
Is that a yes from you, James?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's what Dean has said is absolutely correct. He's just confirming that. Mark, did you want to come in at all, or are you just happy to confirm that what Dean said is correct?
No, I'm happy to confirm what Councillor Carroll said is spot on, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that all right, Julian?
Yeah, I think so. It just seems that the opportunities for investors to save, especially around energy, for example, right now, I would have thought we're pretty there must be plenty of them. So I'm hoping that we will have some projects coming forward on that basis in the next few months, or over this year.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that we need to be careful of, as we've already spoken about in the previous members' question section, as you acknowledged, that at this current time the supply chain isn't as robust locally as we would like it to be, and so the danger of bringing too many things forward at one go is that the price skyrockets. So in order to secure a best commercial return on investments, then we need to stage it over a number of years. But as we've seen in Councillor Nellins' previous reports to Cabinet, to Council in the project pipeline, we do have an extremely strong pipeline of carbon reduction projects. But as I've said, if we push them all into a single financial year, we'll find the outlay for that skyrocket due to the narrower supply chain than in other areas.
Can I have one more bite of the cherry on that one? It just seems to me that there's a real opportunity, therefore, to invest in the supply chain, actually, to do some serious investment in the skills and possibly partnership companies, or setting up co-ops, or even just doing it in-house, so that we can get that supply chain going. If we've got that bit of money sitting there waiting for commercial investment, there's an opportunity, it seems to me.
Thank you, Julian. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you. As Leader and Deputy Leader did confirm earlier that they are very enthusiastic, I believe, in looking for opportunities to expand that sector of the economy. And as I've given you presentations before where you were present, Councillor Dean, I see ourselves as potentially a blue chip investor in this market for developing this sector of the economy. However, they have to be the right investments, because this is, at the end of the day, public money. We need to secure best return on them, so they have to be the right investments, and it has to be ones that is appropriate for us to invest in, and not necessarily competing with the private sector investment.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Gwilym-Butler.
Leader, I'm assuming we're near to close now, so if I just make a final comment, if that's okay.
You certainly can.
All I would say is, as Julian quite rightly mentioned, we have full council next week to discuss the budget. I would like to give it a very good hearing, and to that end, we have put all our cards on the table, and I would urge any alternative budgets to be tabled sooner rather than later, so they get the respect and debate that they deserve. Okay, the door is open. Come and talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. So I have a proposer. Councillor Nellins.
I'd just like to add to that, remind everyone that Shropshire is presently the second biggest generator of renewable energy in the United Kingdom. There is still work to do, but we are well placed at the moment.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Councillor Nellins. So I have a proposer, which is Councillor Gwilym-Butler. I have a seconder, which is Councillor Dean Carroll. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That item's passed. Moving on to the next item, again, Councillor Gwilym-Butler, Treasury Strategy.
Thank you, Leader. This is an annual report that we have to bring to Cabinet for review. I'm very pleased, after doing the audit training, and feel quite satisfied that our Treasury team are doing an excellent job in keeping our investments safe and secure under the guidance of local government legislation and CIFA, etc. The recommendations are there. You will note there's 3 lots of recommendations. That's the same report will be going to the Audit Committee and to full council for approval, which is a housekeeping mechanism. So on this occasion, at 3.1, I move the recommendations A to G. Thank you.
And I'm happy to second them. I'm happy to second those. I've got no hands online, no hands in the room. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Moving on again to item number 10, fees and charges 2022-23. Councillor Gordon Butler.
Thank you, Leader. Again, we have our annual report on fees and charges and how they relate to the financial strategy. The only things I wish to mention are a lot of the fees are actually out of our control and they are legislated by central government or other bodies. However, this is a ripe opportunity that if members require a debate on any of these fees or charges, that we can refer them to performance scrutiny. And I'd be more than happy to do so if there are issues that members wish to raise. I move the recommendations 3.1 to 3.4. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Second to that.
Yeah, I'll happily second that.
Councillor Simon Jones. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Councillor David Basma.
Thank you. Just wanted to raise an issue about parking charges. And I noticed if you look on, I think it's page 135, there's band 6 parking charges are going up by 33.3%. And I think, I might be wrong with this, but I think most of the band 6 parking tends to be in smaller towns. And I think there's quite a high increase there compared to the others. Also, I noticed on the season tickets as well, there's a 33% increase. And if that could be investigated further, because I do think that some of the smaller towns might be being penalised in their increased charges.
Certainly have. Sorry, Councillor Gordon Butler and then Councillor Carroll.
David, yeah, as I said in my introduction, when I was chair of, I think it was place scrutiny, I certainly overlooked the increase in parking charges. In some of our market towns, the car parks are always full. So that tells us the demand and supply. In other towns, we have to be mindful of the cost of implementing the charges. But at the same time, we need to get people out of their cars and have other methods of them to get into their market towns in line with our Shropshire plan. So yeah, more than happy to throw it to scrutiny or to place, whichever happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Julie Buckley, I think you answered before, Dean, so move on. Councillor Julie Buckley.
Thank you. Yes, just to endorse really what was just said about the parking charges. As an example, at last night's Bridge North Town Council meeting, there was a unanimous concern from the town councillors there. It's exactly this point that as an outlying town, two of the car parks will have an increase of 33%. But ironically, they are the car parks which are on the outskirts of the town. So the car parks in the centre will have a lower increase, and the car parks that are out of town, the ones where we exactly want to displace traffic and encourage people to walk or get buses, will see the biggest increase. So can we please apply the principles of the hierarchy around active travel when we are applying these increases? So put the greater increases on the central car park. So I really welcome that could come into scrutiny for a bit of an in-depth look. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you. I think we're very much in danger of scaring the horses unnecessarily on this. I recognise what Councillor Basma has said about a 33% increase in band 6 parking charges, but to put that into context, that's an increase from 30p to 40p an hour. It's a 10p an hour increase, and to suggest that it may be lower in percentage terms than some of the higher bands, but for example, if I pick band 3, whilst it's only a 20% increase in parking charges, it's actually a 20p increase, not a 10p increase. So please be very careful in use of language when saying that the charges are increasing by greater amount. There may be a greater percentage increase, but they're not necessarily increasing by a greater value. I also think that still represents very good value for money. Our market towns are all very much enjoyed by visitors and are often very well visited, particularly in the summer months. I think that it still represents great value for money, and it is absolutely reflective of the hierarchy that the band 6 parking charges will remain at 40p an hour compared to band 1 parking charges at £2.80 an hour. But we do have to be realistic and recognise that we have to keep these balanced in terms of bus charges to try and keep that incentivised bus travel, and in terms of what the market can sustain and support. as I said, it is still completely consistent within the hierarchy of charges. If you look at both the fees for 2021-22 and the fees for 2022-23, you'll see that the hierarchy remains very much in place. And as I've said, we should be very careful when talking about increases, not to conflate percentage increases with actual real terms value increases.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. I have no more questions online or in the room. Councillor Butler, do you want to come back? No, that's fine. So Councillor Butler has proposed. Councillor Simon Jones has seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much, everybody. Moving on to the Butler show today. Moving on to item number 11, estimated collection fund outturn for 2021-22. Gwyn.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Gwyn Butler. Again, this is effectively what I would call a statement of account that we have to bring to Cabinet annually, just to show how we have collected the council tax and business rates during the year and how the account sits. Effectively, the waters have been slightly muddy because of the COVID grants on business rate relief. But at the end of the day, the recommendations are to be noted, Chair. The only thing I would like to say, I'd like to take this opportunity to say that the council tax bills will be coming out hopefully within the next 2 weeks. We are currently running a campaign to get more of our council tax bills electronically sent, both for 2 reasons: to save me money, to help my revenue account, but secondly, for the climate change agenda. Now, what we're actually doing, we're going to have a double whammy on our climate change agenda with this one. If you go electronic, we will plant a tree. So can I urge as many people as possible over the next week or two, go onto the Shropshire Council newsroom. There is a link there. Sign up for e-billing, and let's get Shropshire going green. Thank you very much, Leader. I move the recommendations to be noted 3.1 to 3.6. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gwyn Butler. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yeah, we'll happily second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor
Cecilia Motley.
Thank you. Don't have any hands online. Don't have any hands in the room. All those in favour? Thank you very much. You'll be pleased to know that, well, I think this might be your last one. It's not? No? Okay. All right, okay. Item number 13, Financial Monitoring Report, Quarter 3. Councillor Gwyn Butler.
Could I be paid on performance? Councillor Gwyn Butler, again, this is a normal Treasury management update that we have to bring forward, and the team are doing exceedingly well in low interest rates. The one thing I would point out is here we're getting 0.11%. To repeat that, 0.11% on our investments that we have to invest, as bank rates are historically low. It is interesting that on the council's real estate investments, we're getting in excess of 3%. So it just shows you where the best value for money are for the people of Shropshire. It's to accept the position, Chair, so I move the recommendation in 3.1. Thank you.
Do I have a second to that?
Councillor Bob Bakington's happy to second, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. No hands online. Oh, I have a hand in the room. Councillor David Gasman.
Yes, this is a report which includes, I think, a reference to Acton Scott on page 17, I think, of the original report. And there is there's a comment there about the Acton Scott Farm Museum's closed for summer and no incidents anticipated for the rest of the year. I assume that following questions about Acton Scott, that in actual fact, the opening of Acton Scott will begin after the end of the financial year, but just want reassurance in the future there will be an income stream from that.
Councillor Cecilia Motley, do you wish to come back on that one?
Yes, of course, Chairman. Thank you for that, David. The situation with Acton Scott at the moment is that we are having a lot of discussions, not only with local people and people who are interested in the future of Acton Scott, but also with the owners of the estate at Acton Scott, the Acton family. As you may know, has been unfortunately the originator of the whole Acton Scott historic working farm idea. Tom Acton unfortunately passed away. The estate is now passed down to his son. His son is now looking at all sorts of other ways in which the farm might be run. So I'm not actually at this point going to make a guarantee that the farm is going to open after this financial year, because ultimately the reopening of the farm will lie in the hands of the Actons, depending on how they want to work to bring the farm forward in the future. I think there's a general recognition that whilst the historic working farm has had a great run, visitor numbers are falling at the farm. It's well acknowledged, it's all documented, it's all out in the open. And I think there's a sense, particularly from the Acton family, that perhaps a new approach is needed for Acton Scott. And we don't want to rush to bring that forward, because we want it to be got right. So that's the situation with Acton Scott at the moment.
Thank you. Wrong button. James, you wanted to come in. James Walker.
Just very quickly, just a point of procedure. We're actually on item 12 at the moment, which is the Treasury update, and the question that was asked related to item 13, which we haven't got onto yet. So I just wanted to get that clear before we move to
Okay. So David, that question's the next one, but we'll move on. So item, my fault as well. Item number 12, Treasury Management Update. We have a proposal. We have a seconder. Oh, I apologise, Julie. Is this for the next one or this one?
It was a follow-up on Acton Scott, but I'm not really sure now when you want me to ask that.
Hang on. Hang on. So the financial monitoring report, which is item 13, I will come back to you on that one. At the moment, item number 12, Treasury Management Update. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 13, financial monitoring report is Gwilym again. Gwilym, have you got an intro for this one? Yeah. Okay. Moving on, and then David, you've had the answer to your question already, and then I'll come back to Julia. Thank you, Gwilym.
Thank you again. This is part of our open book policy, which we have to do. It's the end of Q3, and it shows there it's predicting a potential overspend of 4.346 million, which represents less than 1% of our annual budget. But at the same time, we've got to find that 4.346 million. I want to reassure members that we are cracking the whip. Our hands are down the sofa, and we'll have a look, see how it turns out at the end of the year. But we're doing whatever we can to bring us in on budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, I think
I'll move the recommendations.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that?
Councillor Kirsty Hurst, I'm happy to second, Leader.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that all portfolio holders are fully aware of the situation regarding their own areas in terms of trying to make up that budget deficit. So David, you've asked your question, you've had your answer. Did you want to come back to Cecilia, or are you happy? You're okay on that one?
Yeah, thanks very much for that full answer. Apologies for getting that.
It's all right, doesn't matter.
But yeah, I think that we do need to make sure that all options are investigated, because I think there are a number of new ideas coming forward which I know about, and I think it would be good to have them all investigated fully, so that we can hopefully save this kind of excellent facility and museum which is used by so many families.
You don't have to convince me of that, David. You know that. It's very close to my heart. But we will absolutely look at all the options. Councillor Julia Buckley, come back to you finally now for your question.
Thank you. Excuse me. It's a follow-up really for Councillor Motley on the Acton Scott budget really. So the opening statement on the public consultation on the future of Acton Scott states that Shropshire Council can no longer fund that. Can I just ask you to confirm, please, that the budget for 2023 retains the base budget line to support Acton Scott for the next 12 months, and that has not preempted the outcome of a consultation which is still live?
There's absolutely no question of preempting the situation at Acton Scott. We are very well aware of the fact that we need to take time to come up with the right solutions for Acton Scott. And whilst we see Shropshire Council's contribution to the future running of Acton Scott reducing finally to zero at the end of the day, that will not happen until such time as we are absolutely certain that there are viable plans for the future of Acton Scott coming forward. Nobody wants to see the closure of Acton Scott, and I do want to make that very clear. And therefore, we are prepared to work both with the Acton family and with all sorts of ideas that are coming forward at the moment. And actually, it's wonderful, you know, how creative many of these ideas are. They all need careful analysis. We will keep Acton Scott ticking along whilst that happens. But the future for Acton Scott, we feel, and I think we've made clear, does not lie within Shropshire Council. I hope that's made the situation clear now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you for clarifying that you are continuing the base budget for one more year, despite the wording in the consultation that you are removing that funding. So just for clarity, the budget remains for at least one more year, and the description of removing the funding refers to future years beyond 23.
To be honest with you, I am not actually going to commit to the continuation of the budget for a full year, because we may very well not need that. So I don't want to have to commit to paying money that we don't need to pay out.
You've not changed the base budget in the report that's been given to us to sign off, so there is no removal of that from the base budget.
Not,
so
we are not removing it. We're not removing it at this point, but the point is that we're very much hoping that a solution for Acton Scott will come forward well before a year is over and done with. We want to see Acton Scott reopening, but we are very conscious of the fact that we need to reopen it in its new guise, not as it is at the moment. And there are quite a lot of negotiations that need to go on with the family, not least because of the lease and all sorts of other issues that still remain. So that's why I'm not going to commit to saying yes, definitely we're going to keep it going for a full year, because with a bit of luck that's not going to have to happen. So, you know, because we're in a negotiation at the moment, Councillor Buckley, I don't want to have to commit.
Yeah, can I interrupt now? This actually, Acton Scott isn't an item on this agenda. This is about the financial report. So let's save that for another day when a report will be coming back. But I think you've had your answer to that question, Councillor Buckley.
And we will be reporting.
Yes.
There will be a report back on Acton Scott quite soon. I won't give you an exact date for it, but we're definitely going to be reporting back.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. So, no further hands. Oh, I have a further hand. Councillor David Basler.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the reference, but I think if you look at the predicted let me just go back to here we are. If you look in key issues in 2.1, in looking at the projected revenue outturn position, in quarter 2 it was 4.363 million, I think, and now it's 4.34. So there's not a great deal of progress that's being made, and obviously it's concerning really. And I appreciate what Councillor Fox was saying earlier, but I mean there is a big job there to do, I think.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I'll certainly take that back. I think obviously within the financial year, the bulk of the expenditure often gets in the middle months, and that's why there's not been a lot of movement between quarter 2 and quarter 3. But obviously, as I said before, the whip is out and it's all hands on deck. David, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Okay, no further hands online, no further hands in the room. So I have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much. So that was just to clarify, item number 13. We're now moving on to item number 14. There is actually an inaccuracy in the agenda. This report should be brought to us by Councillor Rob Gittins, not Councillor Gordon Butler, so we'll give him a rest. Councillor Rob Gittins, Performance Monitoring Report, quarter 3.
Thank you very much, Leader. Overall performance in quarter 3 is positive. Culture and leisure facilities are seeing an increase in take-up of services. The Theatre 7 had a good pantomime season with a attendance of 84% of pre-pandemic levels. Elsewhere, the claimant count has continued to decrease, and in the year to December 2021, has seen a decrease of 33%. However, it does remain higher than pre-pandemic levels. There's been a decrease in both compliments and complaints in quarter 3 compared to quarter 2. This is very typical of December, usually being a quieter month. Challenges still remain around looked after children and the homelessness strategy. Members are of course directed to the performance portal, a link to which is included in the report, providing information on all the council's key performance measures. So if I could ask Cabinet to consider and endorse the recommendations A, B and C as laid out in section 2 of the Cabinet paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gittins. Do I second it?
Yep, can't miss out, Chair. Councillor Gwyn Butler, second.
Thank you, Gwyn. I've got no hands on screen. Oh, I do have a hand on the screen. No, I don't. I have a hand in the room. Councillor Kirsty Personnel.
Thank you. Just to point out the 2 red flags under care for those in need at any age. The referral rate has gone from 13.1 to 13.8. Let's be clear, that might be 1 or 2 families that have been re-referred. Monthly referrals are scrutinised and they track and audit, and you know, we looked at any lessons learned, and so it's just a minute increase, but it's just to be clear that that's not an issue at this point that we're concerned about. And obviously we've talked at length before about the court delays in the system for looked after children. There is a threshold to be met, and we do keep our children safe in Shropshire. You know, we are working with the court delays. We've seen an increase with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and an increase in under 5s, but that's all something that we are aware of and working on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirsty, for that clarification. No hands online, no hands in the room. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on. So I'm now going to bring forward item number 17 and then leave Councillor Potter to chair the meeting for items 15 and 16. So item number 17, a variation to West Mercia Energy Joint Agreement. Councillor Gwyn Butler.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is a report of housekeeping consideration for the variation to the West Mercia Energy Joint Agreement. It has been agreed by the member authorities to bring this forward. Herefordshire has already agreed, the other authorities, Telford, Region, Worcestershire, in the process of doing as we are today. It is simple housekeeping, which is something that has been decided within the organisation, and I move recommendations 3.1 and 3.2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. Do I have a seconder for that?
Councillor Nellens.
Thank you, Councillor Nellens. Got no hands on screen. I've got one in the room, Councillor David Vasner.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to ask how the agreement's going to be affected by the increase in energy prices, which are coming on board.
Thank you, Councillor Vasner. Councillor Butler.
David, what I would recommend is that we have a West Midlands Energy meeting in early March, which is a public meeting, and I'd be more than welcome to attend. I don't think it would be wise for me to comment on that without having the Chief Executive of WME here to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a proposer, I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. So now I'm going to disappear. I'm going to leave the room and take no further part in the debate, and Councillor Ed Potter is going to take the next 2 items. Thank you.
Sorry, bear with me 1 second while I get the slides. Right then, everyone, we're moving on to item number 15, which is the Riverside Strategic Development Framework, and I will be presenting that as portfolio holder. So, at the meeting on the 8th of March 2021, Cabinet agreed the draft Smithfield Riverside Strategic Development Framework to be subject to a public consultation for a period of 6 weeks. This has taken place through a number of processes via the Commonplace online portal, as well as giving consideration to written representations received predominantly via email from members of the public and other key stakeholders. The Smithfield Riverside Strategic Development Framework has been developed with engagement of key stakeholders, businesses and partners. It's framed around the big draw, a 2-day design workshop. Stakeholders and the general public were invited to shape the ideas, create a working vision for the site. And it's through this vision, LDA Design and Shropshire Council created the principles-based deliverable framework, which reflects the needs and aspirations for the town of Shrewsbury. There are a number of recommendations laid out at paragraph 3 of the report, which acknowledge the outcomes of the consultation process, approve the final Smithfield Riverside Strategic Development Framework document, which is Appendix A in the agenda pack, and in line with the current local plan and draft Shropshire local plan 2016-2038, and specifically the draft policy S16.1, it is agreed that the Smithfield Riverside a development framework being associated with the master plan document of the Big Town Plan is considered as a material consideration in decision making in relevant planning applications. I'll open the floor to any comments, but ask that Cabinet support those recommendations that I've just laid out at item 3. So I've got, I don't know who was first, sorry. Councillor Carroll, then Councillor Julian Dean.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Second the proposal that you've made and endorse everything you said. I think it's a very good, positive step forward for the whole area and for the whole county, as what benefits Shrewsbury also trickles out into the surrounding market towns and villages through increased visitor numbers and increased employment opportunities. I'll happily second what you said.
Thank you very much. We've got a seconder for that. So I'll move on now to Councillor Julian Dean, who's joining us virtually.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I actually do welcome this report, but actually in welcoming it, I'm going to, in the next item, draw some of the remarkable differences between what this item says and what the next one says. But just to draw some of the stuff out here, so I think the consultation processes that the Big Town Plan has gone through have actually been quite impressive. I remember way back when we had the shop in the town centre, that was good, and then managing this consultation through the pandemic. I congratulate officers for the work that was done around that and the report. And it's really interesting. One of the key conclusions, it says, of the 7 regeneration objectives set out, the most important was around current responses for pedestrian-led, in other words, pedestrian and cyclist facilities in the centre of town, which is fantastic. And if you look at the illustrations under 4.5, and this is where I think there is a real issue when we come on to the next item, those illustrations, which, I know they're indicative, but they will be what people used to frame their responses to this consultation. Those show, a lovely vista right through from the footbridge straight up to the bottom of Pride Hill. They show illustrations with hardly any vehicles, and the only vehicle that we have seen, we have one illustration with what looks like a little electric bus, which is lovely. There's only one car shown, and there are 2 pedestrians right in front of it, making it absolutely clear that whatever happens on this plan to Smithfield Road, it will be a pedestrian-led area, it will be a precinct, and the vehicles will be guests. And I think that is in line with what people in the town want, and I don't think that's necessarily in line with what we're going to see in the next report. But I actually welcome this one, which tells us that this has been well consulted on, and that it will now inform and become a material consideration in planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Bring in Councillor Basma.
Thanks very much. Yes, I just want to point out a similar idea, really. If you look at the responses to this excellent consultation, you'll see a lot of people were concerned about the lack of a bus station. If you look on 2.4, getting around, people said the concerns that the existing bus station is shown as redeveloped. And again, later on, to mention the majority of the emails received asked for clarification on the future of the existing bus station. So I think the bus station is a key element, I think, of any redevelopment, should be a key element, should be a central part of it. But in actual fact, if you look in the following item, the bus station is very much an afterthought. It's coming along much later in the development, and I think we ought to be giving the bus station top priority, making it a central point of the redevelopment, as the consultation here suggests.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? I can't see any. I'm looking at multiple screens here. Any hands? So just in response to Councillor Dean, I would totally agree in terms of the consultation. With the 2 years we've had around the pandemic, it has been difficult. I attended several of the online festival events, which again drew out lots of useful information. I acknowledge the need for and the desire for pedestrianisation and the less reliance on reducing the number of vehicles in the town centre. And of course, there is the movement strategy coming forward to the Big Town Plan, which will formulate much of the thinking in the future movement around that. The reason there is differences with the next item is that relates to a specific development, and this item covers the wider Riverside area. And I can reassure members that there's no inconsistency in that, because we're looking at specific development in the next item, whereas this is looking at the whole Riverside development framework. From Councillor Basmore's point of view, in terms of the bus station, I think in the next paper you'll see we've very much included the bus station within the plans moving forward, and I think we all recognise the importance of the connectivity with the railway station and its location in relation to that, to encourage the joined up thinking and the joined up movement of people in and out of the town, particularly in relation to rural buses coming in, connecting with train services, connecting with other buses. So that is something that is certainly given due consideration, and no doubt we'll discuss that more in the next item. Is there any other comments? I think we've had, obviously I proposed the item, Councillor Carroll has seconded it. Can I have a show of hands, all those in favour? And that item is carried. We will now move on to item 16, which is Shrewsbury Town Centre redevelopment phase 1. I'm presenting the item as portfolio holder. The exec report entitled Pride Hill Civic Accommodation and Riverside Development Opportunities that was presented to full council on 23rd of September in exempt items advocated the need to consider an alternative approach to the redevelopment of the Pride Hill Shopping Centre in the context of the wider Smithfield Riverside area. I am pleased to say that the commercial interests that were involved in meant that this item couldn't come forward in the public area have now been resolved, and we are very much able to discuss, as promised, this item in public session, hence it is here today. This was informed by a gateway review that was conducted in the summer of last year, and the report demonstrates the need to ensure that proposals for both Pride Hill and the council's civic accommodation requirements remain relevant and appropriate. The value of the review was highlighted in the context of changing market conditions. You'll remember this was discussed at length in those members that were present at the exempt council agenda item. Remember those were discussed at length. It also links in with the acquisition of the Raven Meadows surface car park, or more commonly known as the GAP site, which was purchased by the council during this period, which enabled a fuller review of their use of that area and connecting up with the wider Pride Hill area and blending it in with the Riverside, which became an option that wasn't initially available to us in previous discussions, and of course this needed to be taken into consideration. The Getting Building Fund has been received by the council via the local enterprise partnership for Pride Hill redevelopment project, ensuring that the project continues to deliver against the milestones and has outputs which have been of importance dependency to due diligence and business case process for Pride Hill projects. And the grant funding agreement variation may be required on this, and this is something that is being worked through with the elect to ensure that the funding remains in place for this project. There are a number of recommendations within this report, starting at item 3. I won't list through all the recommendations because there's a significant run of recommendations through from item 3.1 through to 3.6 in the report, and I very much hope Cabinet will support that. Members have been fully briefed on the proposals for the redevelopment and regeneration of what is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to significantly develop an area of Shrewsbury Town Centre which is in need of regeneration and redevelopment. And it is one of the key strategic aims behind the purchase of the 3 shopping centres. We now have one fully functioning, very well filled shopping centre in the Darwin, which is operating at around 96 to 97% occupancy, and 2 prime development sites within a very attractive area of the town centre, which is attracting a significant amount of interest from the wider market and potential development partners to deliver returns for Shropshire as a whole, and it will bring forward some of the objectives which have been recognised through the Big Town Plan, and I know there's been support from the Big Town Plan for these reports, for this report, and the objectives in there, and particularly we've already mentioned around reducing the amount of through traffic that is passing through the town centre without stopping, more pedestrianised areas for friendly cycle areas, a new transport hub within that to enabling car charging, electronic car charging, cycling facilities, and of course we mentioned the provision of bus station facilities as well. The civic accommodation proposal again provides an attractive opportunity to relocate a number of people into the town centre, working and boosting the local economy within the town centre as well. And of course, we have we're not blind to the fact that Shrewsbury is a historic town, which has a great deal of emphasis to the visitors who come to Shrewsbury, and is very much considered important by the residents of Shrewsbury and the wider county of Shropshire. And we hope to move forward with a development here that is which is sympathetic to our historic nature. The one thing I find slightly ironic is Shrewsbury was founded on the premise that it was to keep people out, hence the river loop, and now all we want to do is encourage people in. So that is a challenge that we are having to face many hundreds of years later. And perhaps if our ancestors had thought about the commercial opportunities that faced us way back then, we wouldn't perhaps have Shrewsbury in the position it is today. But of course, one of our greatest assets is that river. And historically, we have turned our back on the river for its, it wasn't an area of great sanitation. But of course, now we have an opportunity to really use the river frontage and drive forward the regeneration of the town, economic prosperity of the town, which will ripple out through Shropshire, and with attracting significant outside investments into the county town enables Shropshire Council to focus its resources as well on other areas within Shropshire, in particular our market towns and rural areas, which we know are of significant importance to a vast number of our residents. Therefore, I move the recommendations at item 3, and no doubt we'll open this to wide discussion. But have we got a seconder first? Councillor Carroll, thank you very much.
Thank you. I happily second support everything you've said. I think this is a very exciting project that we're now in position to bring forward. Also, the fact that this does have a significant impact on our own long-term corporate position in terms of the building we're currently sat in and its unsuitability for long-term use as modern office accommodation. And this is another step forward in realising the ambition to vacate what is a large, costly and inefficient building on the edge of town and put ourselves into a smaller, leaner, more efficient footprint right close to public transport links and in the centre of the town. So I would happily and enthusiastically second your proposals.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. I have Julian Dean who's indicated on the screen, and then I'll follow with Councillor Basmar in the room. Julian.
Thank you. I'll try and keep it relatively brief. If you want to read a longer version, I've written a blog about this But I mean, the first thing is that I do have to challenge the idea that this is consistent with the previous report. You know, if you look at the conceptual master plan in this report, where there was this vista up to Pride Hill, suddenly there's a hotel. Where there was a virtually traffic-free sort of route through. There's now a big car park clearly vehicles are going to have to get to that car park somehow or other. You know, it's a very, very different prospect, I think, and would have received a very, very different response. But actually, my bigger concern is you know, what's the rush when we've got this idea moving the council to new premises may well make sense, but we're only just coming out of the pandemic. You know, building a hotel and developing the centre of town like this may make sense, but we don't actually have an economic strategy in place at the moment. We don't have a corporate strategy in place. The use of the space in terms of roads and traffic may make sense, but we don't have a movement strategy for Shrewsbury yet. That's been delayed. We don't have LTP4. We don't have LC WIP. Now, all of those strategies should be completed this year. So what's the rush to suddenly say, you know, OK, those strategies may or may not come forward, but meanwhile, we're all going to get on with this. And, you know, and I hear the excitement in Dean Carroll's voice, and that worries me because it means that our attention is being, taken away from these really important strategies, which are about shaping the council post-pandemic, post-Brexit, post-climate emergency declaration. And instead, we're getting excited with shiny new drawings of 3D buildings, you know, and I think it's a mistake to take that step at this stage. So I'm very concerned that we should be putting this on ice. There's some really good ideas in here. It may well be that a lot of this makes a lot of sense. It may well make sense that Shrewsbury welcomes a new hotel. It may well make sense that we have a new civic centre, although there's an argument for having some of that work in the market towns as well. And I do welcome the fact that Councillor Potter reached out, you know, individually to people to reassure us on the fact that there will be bus facility, but we need the movement strategy. We need all those. We need LTP4. We need all those things in place before we make, you know, commitments to invest in this type of infrastructure. So I'm concerned that we're going to be blown off course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Basma, and then I'll come back to Councillor Julia Buckley on screen.
Great, thanks very much. I've got some quite detailed questions and also make some general comments as well. There's quite a lot of information in this report. There's a mention of £3 million being spent, and it appears to be on full consultation fees and not actual work. If we get some more detail on that, I'd be very grateful. If possible, looking at timescale, it's with 2026 before fit-out is completed. Is that correct? And also the buildings have been demolished before any planning application is submitted. Is that correct? Just a lot of detail, which I'd just like to be clarified. And also, there does seem to be quite a lot of delegation to the director. I would hope that we would continue to make sure that there is proper debate at all stages of this development. And I'd just like to say that we should actually look at the overall strategy. There is a need for redevelopment of this area clearly, and there's some interesting ideas in this report. But my concerns are about, as I expressed earlier, about the bus station. It appears that the bus station is an afterthought. I've heard talks about it being underground, underneath retail, underneath accommodation. That it does. The kind of things I've heard about it don't sound to be very encouraging, and don't sound as though it will be a very interesting and pleasant space for people to catch buses. And it will be delayed, and there will obviously be a period between the demolition of the existing bus station and the building of a new one. When you know what's going to happen. I presume that there's some plans being made for that, but it does sound as though we could be without a bus station for 2 or 3 years. The second thing I'd like to say about it really is that I was at a coffee morning in my ward in Untitled yesterday and talking to people about it, and most people have seen the pictures, and most people think it looks more like Telford than Shrewsbury. I do think, and I agree with what Councillor Dean was saying actually, that there's a rush on all this. You know, I would like to see some sort of architectural competition, for example, to look at the whole area and get different ideas from people, professionals, to see how we can actually integrate a redevelopment, a modern redevelopment, into an historic town. I do worry that it will look very garish against the rest of the town, and as Councillor Dean was pointing out, we won't get the vistas perhaps we ought to have. Lastly, probably most importantly, my concern is about the new Civic Center. I noticed in a response to an earlier question in the meeting, Councillor Dean said that refurbishing the Shire Hall would cost up to between 34 million, I think it was. 30 to 34 million, he said, the current estimate for refurbishing the Shire Hall. But in actual fact, what we're proposing here is to spend, at the moment, £37 million on a new civic hub. The initial estimate was 27 million. I note reference in the report to, my screen's gone blank, but I note reference in the report to the problems of piling and the need to put aside, I think, some substantial amount of money for piling, 1.166 million, I think it is. There is a real problem with the land in this area. There was a problem with building the original Pride Hill Centre. The land is not suitable for kind of large structures, and therefore you have to pile considerably. And I worry that the costs of this will go up and up and up as we go forward. I also feel that if you look at the carbon situation, you know, why are we not refurbishing Shire Hall? We're planning to build a new civic hub, you know, which will greatly add to our carbon footprint. While we could actually be refurbishing Shire Hall and making use of this building, reusing it, and not contributing substantially to our carbon footprint. I also worry, and again what Councillor Dean was saying, is that, you know, we don't know the exact requirements we're going to have for office accommodation going forward. I think a lot of people, a lot of staff, from what I'm hearing, is that a lot of people feel as though they shouldn't come into Shire Hall. They've not been prevented from coming into Shire Hall, but they've certainly been discouraged from coming into Shire Hall. And I feel there should be a proper analysis of our needs going forward when the pandemic has really finally come to an end, or certainly when appear a point when we are managing it much more. What we should be doing, I think, with the Riverside is actually getting a private developer to take on more of the risks. By actually building a civic hub there, we are going to take on the risks of building there, and we should be asking a private developer to do it, because we seem to be pouring kind of council taxpayers' money into this development, when we should be actually getting private developers to do much more and retain the existing Shire Hall and get that land where the current civic hub is placed to be redeveloped. I'm sure there could be lots of uses it could be put to. Overall, my concern is that we're embarking, this council is embarking on another money wasting project, a project which results in us spending a lot of money, wasting money, when we could actually be improving Shire Hall, or we could actually be looking at alternative office accommodation throughout the county. When we have, I think the problem is we're going to build shiny new offices for councillors, and at the expense of actually investing money in the resources in the county and buildings throughout the county, which need improvement. So, although I welcome some of the aspects of this, I do think we need to make another look at it. I do think we need to take out the civic hub, and we need to put in a proper bus station.
Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. And I think it's sort of similar comments, isn't it? There's 3 points here. One is around the timing. It seems that we're being asked to give comments on very long-term strategies at the very same moment that we're signing off a one-year budget. So I think we really need to separate the two, and that signing off this year's budget does not commit us to any of these long-term aspirations. And then I support both Julian Dean and David Vasman's point that we need to take some time and take on board comments from local members and residents and stakeholders around taking time to get this right. I'm sure the investment is really welcome to revitalise Shrewsbury Centre. But why does it feel that the tail is wagging the dog? Why does, instead of that movement strategy shaping how this could look, why does it feel that the investment is dictating where the footpath might end up? You know, let's take a moment here to do some really inspirational placemaking and ask ourselves, what is the best way that this could be done? So I really hope that you'll take on board the request to slow down and bring people with you to something that could be really, really impressive. And the second comment around the Civic Centre, I hope that we can take some time to listen to that. Maybe I missed an episode, but as far as I'm concerned, there hasn't yet been a formal decision to demolish Shire Hall. And I understand that the reason that I've been encouraged to join online is because there's ongoing works to meet fire regulations. So we are spending taxpayers' money, we're investing it to bring Shire Hall up to standard so that you guys can sit in that room. So we need to ask ourselves, are we investing in an asset that you're then going to demolish? Has anybody agreed to demolish it? If we've agreed to demolish it, why are we investing money to bring it up to spec? If we're investing money to bring it up to spec, why demolishing it? We need to really interrogate some of those questions there about what we're doing with taxpayers' money. And obviously, as somebody who represents the Shire, speaking as a Bridgnorth councillor, I would want to understand why you want to bring councillors into the centre of Shrewsbury. So, you know, 75% of councillors are from outside of Shrewsbury. Why do you want us to bring our cars to all the meetings right into the centre of the town? How is that helpful in the hierarchy of active travel? Why is that a good idea for movement and the environment? And then my third point really is, I was really pleased, Ed Potter, to hear you talk about the trickle-down effect of the investment in Shrewsbury. Investment in Shrewsbury is really welcome. Can you explain to me how it trickles down to Ditton Priors and Broseley, who have no public transport to Shrewsbury? So how do they benefit from this investment? And what is the investment that you're going to put into the market towns? Are we also going to get civic buildings, or, you know, what is the equivalent investment that you're going to roll out, please?
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll do a bit of a double act here because Councillor Carroll's covering obviously the assets portfolio with a lot around the Shire Hall. Just touching on some of the points raised by Councillor Julian Dean. There is a big difference between reducing traffic and through traffic through the town centre and removing traffic altogether, and the impact that that could have on the sustainability of our businesses and our wider economy within the town centre. We recognise the importance of reducing that through traffic, and I think in some of the proposals we put forward now, particularly around making the area around Smithfield much more pedestrian friendly, removing the dominance of the Smithfield Road, linking it in with the shoulder car parking around the edges of the town, bringing forward at the same time as this. This is not set in stone, this is the next stage, moving forward with phase one, bringing forward the movement strategies that you've mentioned, working along the same paths to ensure that we can deliver on some of these priorities that are clearly highlighted in the big town plan. In terms of Councillor Batman on the bus station, I don't think there's any suggestion that the town would be without bus station for 3 years. I don't know where that's come from. If there's going to be, a building of a new bus station, there would be a temporary measure put in place whilst the ones removed and the other ones put in. We've heard a lot of talk over the years, and this has been going on for a good number of years, around the purchases of the shopping centres, and this leads into the wider strategic plan for regeneration of the town centre, for supporting the high street, and we've seen by the removal of a certain amount of redundant retail spaces is really bolstering the high streets, and we've seen that particularly in the Darwin Centre, but also the amount of empty premises that we've seen across the high streets is reducing, whether it be Pride Hill, or on High Street or Shop Latch. Many businesses under offer. We're hearing from the market that there is a demand in Shrewsbury. Footfall is really good. Visitor economy is really good there. And this is something that has been discussed for a long time now. It's not as if it's happening or coming out of the blue. You know, this has been in train since 2018. And you know, how much more talking, and we've got to move forward with this stage, and there will be opportunities to form and have input into ideas of what we see there, and no doubt things will develop further as more information comes down the line. But we've got to start the process somewhere, and this is very much the moment to do it. In terms of some of the more specific questions Councillor Basma had, I will ask that the councillor, Mark Barrow, the officer, will come back to you on those specific points. I didn't quite get them all jotted down, so perhaps if we could, you could let me have those three after the meeting. I will get those specific technical points, come back to you. And I'll bring in Councillor Barrow, Councillor Dean Carroll, sorry, Mark Barrow, Dean Carroll, to talk about the asset. Sorry, we're not very good with names today, are we, between us? On the assets around Shire Hall specifically.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I am so delighted that I am so forgettable that so far I've been called Councillor Potter, Councillor Dean, and now Councillor Barrow. I'm obviously either doing something right or something very wrong. Okay, so, oh God almighty, I'm sorry, but I've been pulling my hair out listening to some of the contributions made by some of the speakers, and I can only come to the conclusion that some people have not read the entirety of the report. So in terms of when was the decision made to demolish Shire Hall, I refer Councillor Buckley to recommendation 3.6 in this report. I don't think I need to say any more than that. Read recommendation 3.6 in this report. As for why we're investing in Shire Hall if we may be departing it, well, the Building Safety Regulations Act, the post-Grenfell regulations that have been brought in that also apply retrospectively to buildings, mean that we would not be able to use Shire Hall Eaton as an interim measure if we did not do some essential fire safety work. Now, regardless of what decision we take about where we should be based as an authority in the future for our head offices, we still need to be doing some emergency, urgent fire safety work to continue a meantime use of the building. And then coming on to the question of, is it environmentally sound to bring people into the centre of Shrewsbury from all over the county? Well, certainly from the majority of the market towns, at times when the council offices are open and we have meetings in, the civic accommodation will be right next to the bus station and just down the road from the train station. And you can shake your head, Councillor Buckley, but that is the reality. Whereas at the moment, almost everybody coming into Shire Hall will have to drive into Shire Hall. And that is just the reality of the situation. Coming on to the comments that Councillor Basma made, why are we seeking approval to demolish before we've submitted planning applications for submission for replacements of the building? That is quite normal that you would seek to clear the site ahead of the planning applications that come forward for the replacements. Those planning applications would likely be submitted during the demolition process, so as not to delay the ongoing the overall work programme. I have just seen a comment, I think, posted in the chat to say that you only have steam trains in Bridge North. I am very well aware of that. I enjoy the Severn Valley Railway, but I do also know that you do have buses in Bridge North that will take you straight into the bus station that would be next to the Civic Hub. I did say either or. I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little bit cheesed off at this, but as I said at the start, I am rather pleased that some people seem not to have read this report. In terms of the completion objective of 2026, yes, that is the completion objective for the project. Councillor Potter has covered off the fact that we will not be leaving Shrewsbury without a bus station. In terms of the cost of the Civic Hub, once again, if you look in the report, Councillor Basma, the cost of the Civic Hub is clearly identified. The cost of council accommodation is clearly identified as £19.9 million. That is the comparable figure to Shire Hall. The cost of partner lettable space, which is in addition to, although admittedly at the time we were trying to bring people into Shire Hall on a much smaller footprint, but in addition to the council occupied space is the £17.5 million. That takes you to the £37.4 million, but the cost of council facility, which is the comparable figure to Shire Hall, is £19.9 million. That compares with the minimum £30 to £34 million that I gave in the answer earlier. The expectation is that as we move forward that would rise even further and even further for the repurposing of Shire Hall. In terms of refurbishing Shire Hall and the fact that that would be a preferable option to a new purpose-built Civic Hub, you can refurbish and you can refurbish, but you can only make a building built in the 1960s with a solid concrete frame. You can only make it so efficient and so designed for the modern era. We can't move about we can't move about floor space because it's all concrete structure. As it happens, actually, because of its age, the concrete structure is failing, and that is something that we have previously identified as a high risk to the council, that the structure of the existing Shire Hall building is failing. That accounts for a large proportion of the cost. And once again, I refer back to the post-Grenfell building safety regulations. At the moment, we have a fire escape at either end of the south block, which is the one that goes up to the 5th floor. In order to use floors 3, 4 and 5 of the south block, we would have to put in an additional fire escape in the middle. Now, if we tried to punch a hole straight through the middle of the superstructure, the building would fall down, because as I've explained, it's a single concrete frame. You can't punch holes in it. That means we would have to build another structure on the outside of the building to meet those post-Grenfell requirements. You're looking into multi-millions of costs to build that up to 6 stories at level ground plus 5-storey level to make use of all 6 stories of Shire Hall, plus the cost of asbestos removal, which I've seen quoted somewhere that a comment that, oh, there's not much asbestos in Shire Hall. I'm sorry, that is absolutely wrong. That is completely wrong. Shire Hall is typical of a building of its age, which was built with heavy use of asbestos. In terms of bringing staff into Shire Hall, staff have been encouraged not to come into Shire Hall. Yes, of course staff were encouraged not to come into Shire Hall. There was something called a pandemic, for God's sake. We were all encouraged for a whole months of our lives to work from home. That was part of the impact of COVID-19. So yes, staff were encouraged not to come back into Shire Hall. Since the easing of restrictions, we have had to be undertaking urgent works to continue to be able to make use of the ground, 1st and 2nd floors. We are not committing to expenditure to make use of the 3rd, 4th and 5th floors because of the reasons that I've already given, that we may or may not, we still are making this decision, which is part of the paper here, of whether we remain in Shire Hall or move. And we will not be spending money on the building that is putting it past a meantime use. So the current fire safety work to ensuring that we can continue at a meantime use, as has been explained through numerous emails to staff and members, that will require some disruption and restrictions on numbers being able to come into Shire Hall, whilst that urgent fire safety work is undertaken to ensure meantime use. Finally, coming on to the comment of why don't we use a private developer to build the civic hub in Shrewsbury town centre? Well, that isn't off the table as far as I'm aware. This report is bringing forward the options to come at a future date to outline the full business case and the tendering exercise for that. I'd say that would be no different to if we remained at Shire Hall, that process would not be any different in terms of how we would plan that large significant capital work. So I do not at all understand the thrust of that question. I'm sorry once again, Deputy Leader, I am extremely frustrated because so many of the answers I've been forced to give are within the report, and I just wish that some people had read the reports before they came here.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll, for that clear response to those points. I just want to touch back on the sort of economic impact that Councillor Buckley raised. The GVA, the gross value added impact of this development, is predicted in the region of 386 million. That's a circa 20 million boost to the economy each year. An extra 750,000 visitors into the area. And again, we know that when visitors come to Shropshire, come to Shrewsbury, they visit other areas, they spend money in the wider economy, and that all plays into our visitor economy, which we know is such an important part of our wider economy in Shropshire. In terms of how funding will benefit, how funding can be used to benefit elsewhere, there's obviously capital receipts that could come forward, with future development plans for the site and disposal of possible development plots or joint ventures, but also the impact which then can be used to be used in the capital programme elsewhere throughout the county. We know that we have an ambitious programme of capital throughout the county, whether it be in Whitchurch or Oswestry, where I'm off this afternoon, or Bridgenorth coming forward. So there's significant potential there, and of course by reducing our revenue costs around the Shire Hall and being more efficient in our savings, it helps our revenue budget, which can be used to provide services which can be used across the whole county to benefit all residents. And we know it is the revenue element of our budgets which have a significant pressure on them, and by increasing our revenue, making efficiency savings through buildings such as Shire Hall, which are inefficient, we can ensure that revenue is spent where it is most needed throughout the county, in those places, in those market towns and in those rural areas which we all represent and we all know are in need of that funding. I've got no others indicating, so we have a proposer and a seconder, so may I ask all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much, that's carried. I think before we close the meeting,
yes, we need to go back to item. Shall I explain?
Yeah, if I could bring, we're going back by the looks, so if I could just bring in Councillor Gwilym Butler to explain.
Yes, thank you, Ed. Councillor Gwilym Butler, portfolio holder for Finance and Corporate Resources. I refer back to paper number 8, which is the capital and financial strategy. Following on from the debate on that, there appears to be a typo in the recommendations, which I just need to correct. So I need to table an amendment at 3.1a that the figure is changed from 555.960 million to 597.560 million. It was put in place following the last financial confirmation of funding in the rest of the report, but it was missed in here, for which I apologise. So I'd like to table that amendment to start with, and then I would like to take the recommendations.
Okay, so
Councillor Butler's proposing that.
We'll have a seconder. Can we have a seconder for that?
I second the original report.
Councillor Carroll seconded the original.
So vote on the amendment.
Can we all show in favour of the amendment? That's carried.
So now I just need to move the recommendation 3.1A2H with the new figure in item A of 597.560 million.
Okay, so Councillor Butler's proposing, Councillor Carroll is seconding. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. I think that's resolved, and we've clarified that. I'm glad we're able to do it in the meeting. So.
Yes, thank you.
That's the end of the meeting, or the end of the agenda, so I'll close the meeting and thank you very much. And of course, we will see you all next week at Full council.
Before the gaffer went.